right, so today we are going to be rehousing my Carabina versicolor, and we're also going to touch a little bit on care information, conflicting care information, and why I'm hesitant to make a proper care guide, essentially. But before we get into that, you should meet my Carabina versicolor. She is quite small, but she is adorable. I've been raising her for a little bit now, and she has molted a few times with me. So we're gonna go ahead and give her a much better enclosure than this vial. Now, this is a very common way to raise slings. However, this isn't like the best because it doesn't have cross ventilation. And I am one of those who will recommend cross ventilation when it comes to avicularia species and a Carabina versicolor, which is not the same thing, but they do have some similarities, and they both have the same conflicting information when it comes to their care that I've seen and heard anyway. I love her. This is only my second Carabina versicolor ever. I do still have Bon Bon, who was my first Carabina versicolor. She's about 7 or 8 years old, and yeah, I did raise her up from a sling this big. Here on these Tarantula Cribs arboreal sling enclosures, you do have really good ventilation on both sides, and you also have it on the top. Ventilation is important with this species because they do require a bit more humidity. We are just going to use some Reptisoil, smush that down a bit. So even though they are arboreal, sometimes they will use the substrate and their webbing, or they will dig down a little bit under whatever wood structure you put in there, but it also helps hold the humidity. So that's why you still want to use a nice little pinch of substrate in this situation, and then a piece of cork. This is a trick that my friend Martin from Bird Spider CH taught me, at least with avicularia. I don't know if Carabina is the same way, but I follow this rule now with all my Carabinas, avicularias, and most of that realm of tarantulas, which is adding a piece of cork that touches the top or slightly touches the top. And this typically enables them to make a tube-like web that they usually bring from the bottom up to the top. Ever since I started doing this, I have noticed that every tarantula has webbed, and they've made these tube webs that Martin told me they would make. So it looks like he was right. I do know a lot of people will get an avic or a Carabina and say, you know, I've had them for a couple months and they haven't webbed up at all. This is just a little hack that you can try. And we are also going to provide a water dish for these guys. I do always keep a water dish in with them. And the good thing is they don't typically bury their water dish like terrestrial tarantulas do. And I'm gonna fill this water dish up just like this. And I will also lightly mist one side. For some reason, misting has become a controversial thing, which is insane to me. I think misting is like recommended for a lot of tarantulas. It simulates rain, it simulates spikes in humidity like they would have in their habitats sometimes. And it just gives them an opportunity to drink. And they actually need that internal hydration to have a good molt. If they're not internally hydrated enough, that's when you run into issues like them getting stuck in their molt. It's not really about like the ambient humidity, it's more from the internal hydration, what they get from their food and what they actually drink. So giving them a nice little light mist not only helps raise your humidity level, which they tend to like, but it also gives them an opportunity to take some drinks off the side of the enclosure or the substrate. That internal hydration is really good for them. It's necessary. Oh, it looks like she's coming right out. Hi. She's actually quite blue, but it's a little difficult to tell. Let's go ahead and see if we can get her to come out. Hi. Now, the species, I will say, once they start walking on you, a lot of times you're kind of stuck holding them for a bit because they do like to go for a little walk. I do think she grew though. I can definitely tell that she's a little bit bigger than when I got her. She's so cute. My hands are so dry, ignore it. They're so dry and chapped and irritated from all the cold and wind and chicken chores. It's been a struggle, you guys. I'm not even kidding, but it looks like we're growing quite well. We've been eating. All right, let's go ahead and put her in her new home. Oh, now she's on it, but not in it. Oh. My goodness, we are running. Oh, there she goes. She is in it. She's probably about to run out though. I don't know what I did with the lid. There you go. Okay. All right, and there she is. This is a good little enclosure for her to grow a little bit more in before we give her her next upgrade. And I'm also going to place her right over here on the shelf next to my jumping spiders and my other avicularia and my pokies. And the reason why I do this is because I'm pretty strategic about how I keep my animals in here. And the reason why is because I don't know if you can like tell, but like the sun hits right here every day. And it comes in and it hits their enclosures. And I actually got curious and I started tracking what the temperature and humidity is in my Avicularia's enclosure. If you guys remember, I picked her up in November from NARBC. She's just a little Avic sling, which can sometimes be fragile. I would say she is about the size where I become less worried about their fragility, which is usually around 2 inches. I would say she's right at that, if not very close. But when I set her up, I actually put a hydrometer in her enclosure, which I usually never do. But because a friend of mine had sent me a handful of them, I have it. It was given to me and I thought it'd be a little fun just to put it in there and check it out. I decided I would go ahead and use them and just track what my temperature and humidity is at. A lot of people are reluctant to mention temperature and humidity when it comes to tarantulas. And I agree that we shouldn't overcomplicate it too much because at the end of the day, tarantulas can do well in a variety of temperatures. And the rule is usually if you're comfortable, they're comfortable, which is just a safe recommendation. It's just a safe way for people to keep their tarantulas because chances are if you are comfortable and the temperature, it is survivable for a tarantula. And that's just a fact. That is just something that we have noticed when it comes to all species of tarantulas, from like 60 degrees to like 80 degrees. And then when it starts getting a little bit lower than that or a little bit higher than that, people start really getting uncomfortable. And tarantulas are similar in that aspect in general as well. So it's just a safe way to tell people how to keep them. Because of how I place my tarantulas in my room, and these spiders specifically get hit with sun every day, by tracking with the hydrometer, I have noted that my temperatures during the day for my Avicularia specifically go up to about 80 degrees. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, depending on how much sunlight we're getting that day, but typically about 80 degrees is the high. The humidity hangs around 60 to 70%. All I do is mist her occasionally every other day or two, and I provide a water dish for her. And that's just how I've maintained that humidity, is just simply by doing that. And so I wasn't necessarily like adjusting my care to fit in these parameters. I was just curious to see like what my parameters are, okay? Having said that, there was like a recent feud or debate between a content creator and a tarantula vendor. I was paying attention to that and kind of trying to digest both sides of the situation. The content creator suggested not supplementing heat, whereas the vendor suggested supplementing heat like all the time. So personally, I keep my spider room, my animal room, warm, okay? I keep it warm. I don't like it to dip below 70 degrees. Sometimes at night it dips to like 68, 69 if I don't have a space heater on, but I do keep a space heater running on the especially cold nights so that we don't dip below 70 degrees. I'm just not comfortable with it. If I decided to put a heat lamp on my Avicularia, whose temperatures during the day are already going up to 80, sometimes a little bit higher than 80 degrees, right? If I put a heat lamp on her, then I do believe that my fellow content creator who advised against heat is right. I would possibly cook my tarantula. I'm not saying never supplement heat though. I would personally supplement heating if I was keeping them in the basement where it's colder, it's darker. But if I did supplement heat, I personally would not be using reptile products. And I know that's exactly what the content creator was meaning when suggesting against supplementing heat. They can be dangerous, especially if you're not monitoring them or putting a thermostat on a heating pad. Now the vendor was arguing that you should be supplementing heat and using lights. They're a very big advocate for using lights for their spiders. I have nothing against people who use lights, but I have tons of natural light. As you can see on both sides of this room, I don't really find it necessary to supplement lights, especially when I'm keeping the ambient temperature 70 and above. So this is exactly why I am reluctant to say never supplement heat, but I'm also reluctant to say, yeah, you should use heat lights. I wish I could make some black and white foolproof care guide for every single tarantula in my room, but I just can't do that. Things are completely different based on your location, where in the house you're keeping them. There's so many factors, and it's so funny because about 4 or 5 years ago, I actually did do a dedicated Avicularia video,
also known as the Pinktoe tarantula. This is a
very common species that a lot of beginners get. They're very available, they're very inexpensive, and they're pretty simple to take care of. Or are they? Basically, there is a ton of confusing information, a lot of conflicting information on not only their care, but scientifically as well. It kind of seems like the entire genus is just a little bit of a mess. Now, I am a huge advocate of there is more than one right way to do something, and so I thought it would be a very interesting idea to just ask a couple creators about their avicularia, about their care or their experience, enclosure, and then just kind of compare it all. Keep in mind that I did ask a lot of creators from literally around the world, and we already know that people in different areas of the world care for tarantulas differently. So let's just go ahead and see what they all have to say. And everybody was keeping them pretty similarly, but let me just say these were from like across the world. I asked Martin in Switzerland, I asked Exotic Slayer over in Asia, somebody in England, Richard was in that video as well, and Dion up in Canada. So yeah, this was like a video that included a lot of people from around the world and just showing how they keep their avicularia. Of course, this was 4 years ago, so things might have changed, but the one thing that was mentioned a lot was pushing the idea of cross ventilation. And I agree that cross ventilation is also something that is important for the species because they do like humidity, right? But you don't want it to get too stagnant. And if it gets too stagnant and too humid, that's when you have mysterious avicularia deaths. And that's why a lot of content creators will shy away from saying like bump up the humidity, you know, just keep them dry and add a water dish because it is safer to recommend that. Anyway, what am I getting at discussing all of this? Basically, what I want to reiterate here is if you're getting a species of spider, especially if it's your first species of spider, the safest thing to do is look up care guides, look at different people's videos, ask people in groups how they're keeping theirs, just see how everybody's doing it, get your basic care, okay? And then you can adjust it from there, okay? You don't have to stick to a care guide. If you're keeping your tarantulas in a colder, darker area, then you can look into supplementing heating or lighting or whichever you want to do. Just make sure you're doing it safely and you're not using like reptile products. And of course, if you're keeping a sling like this, how would you possibly heat this? However, I have kept animals this size warmer, especially those Hylas that we bred. And the way that I actually did it was I put them in between my snake enclosures, there's a heat lamp in there. And so it just stays a little bit warmer in there. So I would actually put my Hylas slings that were in these like in there, and that worked on supplementing heat. So you can get creative, okay? You can figure things out. You can play it by ear. One of my favorite things that I have is it's a little temperature gun. So I use it all the times with the chickens, but it works great for the reptiles too, and the spiders and everything. If you're curious and you're wanting to track temperatures, you know, and see if your spiders are in what is considered like a normal range. Keeping spiders is a learning process, right? I've learned a lot over the past like 9 years about. So if you have any questions, you know, I'll try to get to you in the comments. I know tons of viewers respond to comments all the time, helping people out too. So if you have advice or thoughts, feel free to add them below. But that's all I have for you guys today. I hope it made sense. I know it was a lot of rambling and I don't know how cohesive it was, but it's probably gonna be a mess to edit, but I'll figure it out. But anyway, like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're not, and you want to be, don't forget I have an Instagram to use probably way too much is at Tarantula Kat. You can go follow me there. I also have a website, tarantulakat.com. Go check it out. I will see you guys soon. Let's get into the members picks.